Uh,
Hey guys, how's it going?
hey, what's up, man?
Is that me? Oh,
That
yeah.
was it was my phone that you were hearing, I think.
No,
Anyway,
it was me too. Wow.
okay.
It's almost like none of us have ever done this before.
The fact that
Wow.
we can get on here at all and hit the right buttons after the type of spring kickoff that most of us had is probably a miracle to say the least, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting time.
Oh, yeah. Seeing on here, pivot, Brian, pivot. We're pivoting.
Well, thanks
Yeah.
everyone for joining the StreamTeam Beekeeping chat tonight. Brian has a great guest lined up, Randy Oliver, and as you can imagine, researchers in the beekeeping world this time of year, it's things are always happening, they're always improving, and I think that right now, Brian, what's the latest with Randy?
I got an email from him a couple hours ago, and he had just gotten home from a speaking engagement in Chicago. He had a group of beekeepers coming over, and they were headed out to a research yard, and he is leaving back out of town tomorrow. So his timeline is tight. If he pops in, I'll be surprised. If he is working in the bees and does not have time to message anything like that, I truly understand that. I mean, that's important, and we all know his time is valuable. And if he's got a group of beekeepers there, um, it's probably difficult for him to step away. But that's where we're at. But if he doesn't have time to join today, there's always another time. So he knows about the stream team. He wants to join. It's just fitting the stream team into uh, a traveling beekeeper's schedule. So
The
that's
fact
all.
that any of us can even get on here this time of year, it's let alone guests, especially when your work and your craft is dedicated to bees. I mean, it is, as you can see from the windows behind Brian there. It is there's a lot of light left, and most farmers and beekeepers are notorious for working until dark 30. So we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We'll see if Randy can make it in tonight. Otherwise, we'll have a fun chat tonight. There's an awful lot of things going on right now out in the bee yards, no matter where you are in the country. And so I think we'll get into some of the thick of that. Brian, I can say here at Nature's Image, wow, we're just coming off the heels of our third incredible package run, bringing back package bees, and it is so much fun to do that. I got to give a special shout out to all of our Nature's Image Farm folks, all of the folks traveling from not just Ohio, but we've had folks coming from North Carolina, New Jersey, Missouri. Some even wanted to come all the way from Portland, Oregon, for packages. Those ones we were able to say, hey, let's talk about getting you our queens and you requeening and getting
Wow.
genetics that way. But it's just a tremendous show of support from folks. From the Burns family, we can't thank you enough for all your support. You guys are literally what helps us keep the lights on at the farm, and it is just a tremendous outpouring of love and support. But the community that's being built around beekeeping here in East Central Ohio at Nature's Image Farm is just second to none. And so we're humbled and so grateful for that. It has been an incredible swarm season here at the farm already. It's been such a wild
Wow.
week. If you may have noticed, we've really done something out of the ordinary, and we've actually posted not just one but two videos this week.
It's
And so
amazing.
it's kind of it's a fun time. But the first video that we posted this week is I can't give it away, but definitely go check it out. We an entire skid of loaded
Wow.
EnduraHive wax dip boxes to a very special beekeeper in the United States. And if you go check out that video, we leave a little hint as to who we sent that to. Comment on that video below and let us know who you think that is going to. We're going to have Brian help us with a wheel of fortune. We're going to put all the names in there, and then we're going to send an EnduraHive wax dip box loaded full Premier's Puracell Double Wax Foundation, the best boxes, the best foundation to a lucky winner. You don't want to miss that. That's pretty cool. Second video we posted this week is if you guys have been following along the Susie's Top Bar Hive saga. And the quick story on that is we had a top bar hive that no matter what we did, we really couldn't keep bees in until I cut some Premier foundation in the shape of the top bar hive, and I melted that into a top bar. I did several of those, and Brian was there. We had an extra package on package pickup day a couple years ago, and Susie wasn't paying attention, so we kind of snuck over, took that package, and just shook it in that thing just to see what would happen. And wouldn't you believe it that package stuck? You throw a package in on a top bar hive, not really caring so much about the outcome, and they stuck. And they lasted 2 years, no treatments. They got one oxalic acid treatment, I think, in 2 years, and they did great. They were super strong, filled the entire thing out, and but however, they were overcome with viral loads this past wintertime. They just didn't make it. I didn't even go in and clean any of the dead bees or anything out of it. It's just been kind of sitting there. And on April 27th, on our last pickup day of the year, I'm just catching my breath. We just had a bunch of customers that just come through, and the kids say, "Hey, there's another swarm." And so I look outside, and there is just this massive cloud of bees in that bank barn, electric pole, milk house area. And my first thought is, okay, grab my Apame bottom box, the hive kits that have the Apame bottom already attached and the lid. Let me go out there. We'll try to get them going inside of it. And as soon as I did that, I looked, and they're all piling in to this top bar hive, and it is so amazing. A lot of you know what it's like, but if you're new to beekeeping and you haven't been in the middle of a swarm, the smell, the sight, the energy, you can just, to be in the center of all of that creation. There's a certain power to that, and to be right in the middle of it is so incredibly exciting and inspiring. And so we actually were able to capture some of that footage. We put that into a video that just released earlier today, and how fun is that? But it has been a lot. There's been swarms all over the place. We had a few dead out boxes just sitting around, and I'm walking by them the last couple of days. They're not only are they full of bees, they needed boxes, and I didn't even know they were there. But I think that's what a lot of folks are talking about. And I don't want to hog the mic. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. We've got some footage. I hope we can get it out. We've talked about an old timer thing called tanging, where you tang or you beat on something that makes a percussive sound. Boy, I got a cool story to tell you about that. We've got video to hopefully follow a little bit later, but we'll check back in on that a little bit later. Bruce, down in Dothan, Alabama, how has the last week or so been for Bruce and Bruce's bees?
Well, man, last week was a whirlwind. We had a really good time. I went out to Utah, actually, and my daughter graduated from college at BYU. And it was just a really awesome opportunity to go see her and some of my wife's side of the family out there. And so on Thursday, I flew out Wednesday afternoon, and I went to graduation, pretty much an all-day event on Thursday. And then, Thursday. And then Friday, I actually reached out to some, you may have seen it on my channel or in the StreamTeam Beekeeping Chat Facebook group, but I reached out to anyone in Utah that wanted to get together. I know it was last minute, but we ended up with, there were a total of, I think there were 6 of us there. We had Glade Sessions. We had Jason Egan. We had a fellow named Ian there. We had, I can't remember his last name for some reason. Names are, Jason's wife is there, and John Mackley was there. We've met John before. I think that was everybody. If I forgot somebody, please forgive me. But there were 6 of us there. Great opportunity to talk about bees in Utah. We met at a very popular restaurant in Utah. It's called Cafe Rio. And, of course, you know what kind of food that is. It's kind of like it's just a really good Mexican food there. And but we talked. We met at noon and talked for over 3 hours. So it was pretty cool. I think John had to leave. John had to leave a little bit early, but the rest of us just hung out there and talked bees and talked, life. And we just broke bread and just really enjoyed. And I got to know some guys. Also, another fellow out there, and I'd like to kind of give a shout out to a couple of guys that actually have YouTube channels out there. One is Glade Sessions, who is Utah Bee Man. He was with us there at that lunch. And he's got some pretty good things going. He's a really solid beekeeper. And so you should go check out his channel if you're interested in finding out what beekeeping is like up in the mountains out west. Glade Sessions. Utah Bee Man, I think, is the name of the channel. I think it's Utah Bee Man - Glade Sessions. Another young guy, his name is Bracken Barker. And he's got a channel called Barker's Bees and Honey. Young guy has been through some things in life, but I watched a video of his where he told his story. He wasn't unable to eat lunch with us, but we kind of communicated back and forth. And he's got kind of a new channel going, but bees kind of helped to save him, I think, from some issues he was having. I'm not sure what they all were, but he has a video from a while back where he talks about his life story. Reminded me just a little bit of Brother Tim McCandless. Maybe not quite that, it's a different story, but that type of a thing where the bees practically, I think, in many ways saved him from a lot of things that he was having issues with, and just a really cool story. So he does have a YouTube channel, and he also seems to be a really solid beekeeper out there. Young guy, I think he's in his 30s probably, but he's just getting it done out there in Utah. They're just north of Salt Lake. So had a great week. I flew out Wednesday afternoon, got there about 9:30 Wednesday night. Thursday graduation, Friday hung out with some beekeepers, and early Saturday morning flew out and came home. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I had a chance on the plane. I put a lot of work into my most recent video about how to film or how to shoot footage or YouTube videos. And I hope you've had a chance to watch it. I know everyone out there isn't trying to make YouTube videos, but it kind of shows you a little bit about what kind of work's involved with shooting the videos. I've had a lot of people ask about doing a video on editing, and I have no idea how to do that. I'm still trying to figure out editing myself, but how to get in there and actually explain what I'm doing. I'm not even sure what all the different little parts of the program are even called. I know the icon to click, but I don't know what it's even called half the time. So, but I wanted people to get an idea of kind of some camera angles and just things that I do. I obviously could do better. I could have a fancy, an 8K camera like Brian has, or you, Greg. You guys have the fancy cameras and all that stuff, but
one's there.
But it's just, you don't have to have the fancy equipment to really be successful, to throw up YouTube videos. They don't have to be perfect, but I gave some pointers, things I've learned over the last 500 videos I produced or so, and maybe it'll help you. And I've still got a lot of learning to do. So I'm not saying that's the way you should do it. It's a complete Mike Berry thing. It's like, this is how I do, not how to do. Mm-hmm. But I hope there were some tips that maybe help someone out just a little bit. And that's one of my most, I had to learn all kinds of new editing things. I had two lines going on the editing software at the same time, trying to figure out how to do that. So it was really an educational experience for me as well. And then I've got a video coming out that I'm working on right now. A fellow named Joel Miller came and helped me from North Georgia. And the Saturday before I went out to Utah, I knew I was going to have to wait 2 weeks between really getting my bees or close to that. So I went and checked the bees. I started off on Friday myself, and they were just packing honey in like crazy. Had a strong spring flow here. So I knew I probably needed to add some more boxes. So I assessed on Friday, went out and got some boxes, stacking them up like 45 more boxes on Saturday morning. And I started that process anyway. And then he met me. He was working in this area. He's from North Georgia, not far from Bob Benny up there and Seth Hill and those guys. And he came down. He's a hobby beekeeper, just a great guy. And he said, "Tell me what to do and I'll do it." And so he helped me out. We went down to Applin Farms in Slocum and assessed all those bees. And we also checked for those grafts that I did, checked the queens in there. And that's the video I'm working on right now. And I'm going to tell you, for those who are on here, it's really just the three of us, right, guys? So I don't want to give it away. It's not a spoiler or anything, but I had pretty good success with those queens. I was really surprised at how they did and how many of them got accepted. So that video will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of days, maybe Friday, Saturday, or just as soon as I can get it done. But that's what's going on here. We're going to harvest honey next weekend, and I've got some people helping me with that on the 10th and 11th. And just a whole new process there. We've got some new equipment. We're trying some new things. So I'll hope to produce some kind of video with that, and just kind of rocking and rolling here, just trying some different things. And it's been a fun year so far.
Wow.
So I've been busy.
Sounds like you've been busy, Bruce.
If someone asks me if I'm been busy, I'll use, to borrow a term from Yappy, a little bit. That's what Yappy.
A little bit.
A little
Wow.
bit. Yes.
Brian,
Wow.
what have you been up to?
Oh man, splitting colonies. First time I ever split colonies in April, at least in Northeast Ohio. I know some folks are able to do that in like Southern Ohio, but up here, just where I'm located at, we're on the very southern edge of like the lake effect weather. So we're usually second and like third week of May is the earliest that I've done it before. So I split them, it's been a week ago now. So it's crazy. I went and peeked today just to see, hey, are they still in there? And did I screw anything up? And, they're doing good. My other colonies, I had to go through, and it was just a couple days early, but I yanked my strips out just to get ready for supers to go on, because I noticed, like, when I was over recently, they're starting to bring in some nectar like crazy. So I probably should have yanked my apivar a little bit earlier, a couple days ago, but I didn't want to take, for me, it's like, well, I'd rather have them have that treatment on. But if it bites me in the rear and they end up getting swarmy, well, lesson learned, But this year is crazy as it is, so I think it'll be okay though. I've got the supers all ready, but it's going to get busy. So I've never, I mean, prior to this year, if you would have said, hey, May 1st, you're going to be talking about adding supers onto your colonies, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? Because normally we haven't even split or done anything else yet. So, but yeah, this year's something. So,
Well, Brian, you've sort of catapulted the conversation into a certain direction. I know we have a question here pertaining to that. Maybe while we'll hope Randy Oliver can join us a little bit later on. He's out in the research yard. Hopefully he can make it. He's been busy, and he's heading out, I guess, first thing in the morning for a speaking engagement. So if he can't make it, we understand. But in the meantime, Brian, you said something there that my ears kind of peaked, because it's the time of year where we're going to be getting a lot of questions regarding that. And so since you brought it up, maybe we'll go ahead and talk about it. I would say for a more in-depth or a little better visual representation of what we're alluding to, maybe check out Brian's most recent video on splitting a colony, and you can see kind of what he's going into, what he's working with there. Mm-hmm. But Brian, you mentioned this is the earliest that you've split a colony. Can you talk to us for just a minute on why so early, and what resources did you have that you were comfortable using to actually make the split with?
Oh, so this year, as everyone knows, has been temperature-wise has been above normal. We have had flowers, different trees, everything blooming weeks ahead of where we would normally be at. I looked at a document the other day, and it was just talking about in Ohio, different flowers and things like that, when they bloom, when they should end. And dandelions was one that I caught. It said they normally start middle of April and they're ending towards the end of May. Our first round of dandelions is already into seed. They have the little, I don't know what the correct word that you want to call them. The little white You know what I'm talking about. They're already to seed.
Yeah.
So we are very, very early. What I've learned through the years as far as splitting my colonies, now you have Mother Nature, who she's giving all of our colonies, hey, here you go. You have, nectar sources, you have pollen sources early. So what are colonies going to do? They're not going to say, well, we can't do this until May 14th. We can't do this until May 21st or whatever it is. We're going to go. We have what we need. We're going to build up and we're going to go. Now, this year, I think my timing, I only messed up one colony. I had one colony swarm second week of April, and I've literally never had that before. That's why I was so caught off guard. But my timing on all the other ones was about spot on. And what I've learned through the years is I go through and I just look for the signs. I'll look at how the colony's brooding up. I look for, the drone brood that they're, how much drone brood they're laying, because they need the drones before they're going to get swarmy. They're not going to swarm if there's absolutely no drones, because they're just going to doom their new queen. So I look for those signs, and then I look for the little practice cups, and I know that when I see like the drone brood in the cups, well, on average, I always say I got about 2 weeks. Once I see that. This year, the timing was about perfect, because when I went and it's in my last video, when I went and checked the colonies that I went through to split, I think I only found one capped cell that looked like it probably had been capped that day. So they all were still, open cells. So the timing was about perfect. Found all of the queens. And then I had a couple people comment, like, when I do my splits of the three of us here, I'm on the very conservative side. I could, move my queen over. That way it kind of eliminates that swarming nature out of her, because she's like, and some people call it an artificial swarm. Relocate it. It's kind of resetting them. They're like, hey, I got a new home. The original colony, they do not have a queen anymore, so they're not going to swarm without a queen. It's just, I've never had that happen. Now, to say it never would, well, maybe they get a virgin that hatches out, and who knows. But at least in my yard, I've never had that. For my splits, I will typically move like two good frames of brood. When I'm moving those frames of brood, and I talk about it in the video, they're fairly newer brood frames, and they're typically the ones that I get are from the outer edges of the brood nest, just because you want to make sure you're not moving cells, because that's just going to doom that queen that you're moving. Well, it's just going to lead to a bad situation. So I move like two frames of brood over. I make sure I've got a good frame with some pollen, and I make sure they've got some honey and nectar. I'm very light on my splits. I do that because I don't want to, the parent colonies, the original colonies, I don't want to pull that much from them so that it hurts my honey flow. I'm in the bee game for honey. I'm not in the bee game to make bees. So that's, to get that clear. Yes, I could, like, when I go through there and I see all those frames, and I know, Greg, if you watch the video, you're probably drooling, because when I'm pulling a frame and there's 3 and 4 and 5, cells there, you're looking at, oh my gosh, well, let's cut that one off there and put this over here, and let's cut that one off and put it over here. Me, I don't think that way. I just, I'm in it for the honey, so I don't want to deplete, my original colonies that much. So I do give them, the colonies that I move, I do give them, a little bit of a pollen patty, and I do give them some syrup. That way they have, some food there. But I'm very conservative on my splits. That's just at least how I've
But
done
you
it.
did you move a queen cell over? Is the question.
No.
Okay, so the reason I asked, and we can talk about all the splitting things a little bit later, or folks have specific questions. But if you have any questions tonight, leave them in all caps, and then we'll that way it'll hit our uh, uh, algorithm automation job, and we'll be able to see that. Here's why I asked you the question, because it led right into one of our viewers here, our local buddy Scott Boring. Which, by the way, Scott, I got to get with you on a couple things, so we're gonna get with you here soon. Scott asks question: is there a difference between a walkaway split and a dirty split? And Brian, what you just kind of outlined is pretty much a walkaway split. You're not bringing any queen cells over.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you had queen cells in the colony.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why you didn't move a queen cell over to the splits?
I just have always done it that way. If I have this thing in me where I like to try and keep queens, so I try and make sure that I just move that queen over just to keep them. Now this year, why I did that, I don't know, because every single one of my my production hives are going to get new queens anyways once I get down and talk to you and we line up a date. So really it wouldn't have mattered this year, but it's just what I've always had programmed into my head. I'm always careful when I do move over a brood frame. Just there's sometimes I like to keep them, and if I can keep a queen for 3 years, I will.
So let me back up just a sec, just so we can clarify for anyone who's maybe listening. When we talk about making the split, you're moving the queen to a new position,
Mm-hmm.
and you're leaving the existing colony behind. But are you leaving the existing colony behind with a queen cell?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay,
That
that's
existing
what I wanted to
colony.
be clear on. Yeah.
Yep, that existing colony. Any of the cells that I find, they stay there, and I'm very, very cautious. And that's the one thing that, for those new beekeepers, if you're doing this, try not to, if you're doing an inspection and just because you move your queen over, don't think, well, I can just rip through this, colony like a bear. Because if you go through like a bear and destroy all those cells, well, that colony is taking a little bit of a hit. So I'm very cautious then, and I try and remember the frames where those really nice cells are. I had in the video too, there was a really nice image of a cup versus a cell. So that way somebody could see how a little teeny cup looks. And then there was nice cell next to it. You would have been, your little knife that you carry, Greg, would have been just itching to cut that bugger off.
It's itching right now. You just talking about it. Stop it, Brian. So good. So that's why I want to make sure. So you made one split, and you took the mother queen from the colony, moved her to a new location, left everybody else at home with resources. And how many queen cells did you leave behind? Uh-oh, here we go. Don't tell me 12.
Oh boy, probably.
Okay, well, we can talk about that too. I think it was Jason at Bohemia Bees. I think it might have been him. It might have been you. One of you put out a video from your visit at our place where we left more than 2 cells in there, and they all hatched, and we started getting cast-off swarms as they were all emerging. Do you worry about cast swarms, and it's on a colony that they're already building up swarms, leaving so many queen cells behind?
I typically don't, but you're going to have me thinking about it.
Uh-oh.
And the only reason why, normally I typically don't, just because, well, I've never run across it. Never had, colonies where they'll throw off those swarms like that. But prior to this year, I've always run double deeps. So thinking about it, and this year, okay.
Is that a
As
helicopter? Or is
as
that
our
is
pal
that a
Tim
motorcycle?
McCandless would say, that is the mating call of the Kawasaki.
I didn't catch a view of it, but yeah, like John says there, this isn't a normal year. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, with me going to singles this year, and like right now, so everybody knows that I'm switching over to singles, but my colonies that are larger, they have a deep and they have a medium that I'm allowing them to work. They're working that medium like crazy. It's got brood in it, and they're actually the colony that swarmed in April. I would say 6 or so of the frames in the super are getting packed out with nectar.
Mhm.
So my plan now is give it 4 or so days, 5 days, just to let that apivar. I think you're supposed to let it go 7. I'm just going to see how things are. But I'm going to throw my queen excluder on in between the deep and the medium, and they're all going to get 2 more supers. So they'll be set up at that point, they'll be in a single brood because they'll just have that deep where the queen is going to be forced into that one area, into that deep, and then they'll have 3 supers. Now, the super that is just above the deep, I am never going to harvest. That is basically going to be like that's their bank. So I'm just going to leave that for them. If it ends up getting filled out, I'm probably in some way going to have to mark those just because those were on while the apivar was on. And that'll be what they get for the winter, because in the winter, I'm going to go, they'll have, it'll be basically 1.5 because they'll have a deep and the medium for winter. So it's like a, yes, single brood, but kind of hybrid, I guess. I don't know.
Bruce, when we talk about, I'm going to ask you the question, Bruce. I think we've talked before. You usually don't try to leave more than just a couple cells in a colony. But Bruce, a lot of terms get thrown around. They kind of get muddied up. They get a little confused. When you hear the walkaway split and dirty split, are those interchangeable as far as your definition of those, or are those two different to you, Bruce? What's the difference between a walkaway split and a dirty split? Is there a difference?
Well, I'm not sure I've heard the term dirty split, so I'm not sure. But a walkaway split to me is just strictly, you don't worry about finding the queen. You kind of equalize the resources, and you just make sure you got at least some young larvae or eggs in each colony with enough brood, enough resources to make a good split. And then you just break them apart and you don't worry about it. And they make their own queen. They'll use the hive that has the queen in it will go ahead and continue on wherever they are. And the other two theoretically will form emergency cells and make their own queens. And that to me is what a true walkaway split is. In the case that Brian's talking about, if I intentionally, there's that word intentional, if I intentionally leave some cells in a colony that I feel like is going to be, they've already made queen cells, like swarm cells, for example. If I don't want to cut those cells out, which I rarely do that, I just don't usually do that. But I would just leave a couple of good, healthy looking cells. Sometimes you can see the bees, they'll be tending to cells. And to me, that kind of is an indication it's probably a healthy, viable cell. They'll kind of walk around them, they're on them, they're interested in them. So if I see a couple of nice looking cells, I'll just leave a couple and I may break the rest down. Or another option is if you want to break it down into more splits, you can, like if you say you have a double deep, for example, you take the queen and some brood, like Brian explained, away. or you can leave her there wherever you want to put her, and then you take the other box. Say it's the other box has plenty of resources, you can split it into two. If you got cells on more than one frame, you can end up with two splits that have cells in them that way, and be able to utilize those cells a little better. So that's kind of another strategy you can have. I think there are advantages to leaving the queen at home, and also there are advantages to taking her away. If you're trying to prevent swarming, then what Brian did, I think, is a really good idea, because you're taking that queen away. I guess the idea is it's a false or a forced type swarm situation, and so the idea is that they think they've swarmed, and I think that's what the idea is. And if you, it's good to have some brood in there in that situation, but those things sometimes will snap into some really good productive bees that build really quickly if they truly think they've swarmed. So you may not need to take as much brood as you might otherwise do, but those are just all things you have to kind of play around with. So that's I'm not sure. To me, if I was just thinking true walkaway split and dirty split, I would think it's the same thing, but I'm not familiar with the term dirty split. So I'm going to learn something tonight, Greg. What do you think?
I think they're unintentionally used interchangeably. When I think about it, however, when I think of a walkaway split, which is my absolute, if there was a method that I abhor, it would be a walkaway split, primarily because time is money. And even if you don't look at your bees as a profit generator, they are an asset generator, whether you're using the asset or the bees are. And to me, when you take a cohesive unit who has strength in numbers, that needs that exponential size, workforce, and delegated duty, when you break that up prematurely, you don't double your yield. You don't take a colony that's in doubles and then split that without looking and then get twice as much yield. What you end up getting is yes, they're going to keep producing, but you're going to break up the ratio of nurse bees, house bees, forager bees, drones. You're going to break up that synergistic relationship in the colony, and I think that there are consequences to doing that. So in my mind, a walkaway split is something where, let's talk about doubles, for instance. Let's say in the springtime, you hear everyone freaking out over swarms and swarm cells, and you're not sure what to do. And I understand that. But you take something like doubles, and you literally take the box, you put one of the box on a bottom board, and you put it over here, and you leave the other box where it's at without even looking. You split it, and you walk away, and you let the bees figure it out. To me, that's what a walkaway split is. Or even if you have singles, and you go through there and you dig Brian's scenario where he pulled the queen, made the split, and then left the parent colony queenless, but in the same position. Had there not been queen cells in there, that would also be a walkaway split. A walkaway split is, in my opinion, when you are splitting something before they're ready or before they're providing the next outcome, right? So there's no queen cells. You're splitting them. You just do the math. You're talking about you're setting the colony up almost not necessarily to lose, but you're losing, moving that needle forward from let's say the moment you split that. Let's just talk about doubles, for instance. It's easy. You've got two boxes. You're going to split them. Great. For whatever the reason is, that's up to you and your bees. You split it, right, without looking. Let's say there was no queen cells in there. Whoever, let's say here's queen, she's on this side. The original colony is now queenless. Within 10 minutes or so, maybe sometimes shorter, maybe sometimes longer, they recognize that they're queenless. And if within the first 24 hours they decide to go ahead and start making a queen, you're looking at 16 days before virgin queen emerges. Then you're looking at, on average, 10 days or so for a mating flight. And then within 3 to 5 days of a mating flight before she starts laying. And then you're talking 24 days before you have brood emerging. I mean, you're talking about really setting the colony back. Are there benefits to doing that? Sure. If you were really worried about mite treatment and you wanted to split and do a walkaway, so you intentionally have a very healthy brood break for using oxalic acid, okay, you can justify the use of a walkaway split. Otherwise, I think you're hurting yourself, and you ought to wait for there to be queen cells formed. Use those as an asset. Buy yourself, let the bees do the work, and that's going to save you an enormous amount of time. So that's what a walkaway split is to me. A dirty split, that I think a walkaway split, I think is you're breaking those boxes off and you're walking away. What makes that dirty, I don't even know. It's almost like a no look, where you just take 2 boxes, don't even look, and boom, you pop them over and you walk away. So a walk away maybe is more intentional. You go through, there's no queen cells. You still need to split them or thin them down. So you do, but there's no queen cells. That's a walk away split. You're walking away, letting the bees figure it all out. A dirty split to me is like you're not even looking. You take doubles, you pop them, you do this, you do that. You totally walk away with no introspect on what is going on inside the colony. However, I'll say this. Commercial beekeepers do a lot of what looks like a dirty split, but when they make that split, they're dropping a queen cell in each box. And in that case, the original queen, wherever she is, it doesn't matter, because you can make hundreds or thousands of queens. You're less concerned with that one queen in the box from last year. You make the split, you're not even looking, you drop a queen cell in the box at the time that you do it. You let them hatch. You're more than likely going to have 2 fresh queens in those boxes. So that's a different procedure. In my mind, walkaway split and dirty split are almost used interchangeably, but a dirty split, I think, is a walkaway split. It is just as down and dirty as you can get. Not even looking, boom, split them out and walk on.
So did you say that you call when you drop a queen cell on both of them, you call that a dirty split, or what do you call that?
No, that's just I mean, when I think about down and dirty splitting, it is doing that. It is, I'm not going to look in these boxes. However, I still have a plan where I'm not going to look in the doubles. I'm going to, like on a 4-way pallet, right?
Yeah.
If you've got 3 colonies on a 4-way pallet, and you snag a box off of one of those and you throw it in that empty void and drop a queen cell, you're not looking to see what's going on, but you're dropping a queen cell. That's not exactly, in my opinion, a dirty split, because you're adding a queen. So the dirty split is you're not looking at it. You're just grabbing the boxes, throwing them on a new space, and you're walking away.
Yeah, when I don't know what they're called, but I did that. Somebody mentioned the video where when I had my first queen cells that I introduced this year, I bought from down south of the line here, and I just did a lot. I called them blind splits, where you just I did make sure that there was enough bees and brood in the splits, but I just took a box off, made sure everything looked good, make sure we had some brood in both colonies, and just set the one box over on a pallet a few feet away, maybe even, and just create a new split, and then came by the next day and just dropped a queen cell in both colonies. I call them blind splits with cells, I guess, because they're totally blind. I never found the queen, didn't worry about finding the queen. And they ended up working out pretty well. I did have a few that didn't take, but most of them did. And most of the queens that I saw looked fairly vibrant and young. And so I believe, you can tell a queen that's a year or 2 old, even if they're doing a good job, they look different than a new queen. There's just a different look about them. And so most of the queens that I found seem to be those younger queens. I found a few that I think were the original queens, especially if they have a red dot on them. I know it's an original queen, but I think that's a way that if you want to just, I think, boost your production early in the spring, you can do that. And I think a lot of commercial guys do that. I know some of the bigger bigger people. I learned it from a commercial beekeeper, that technique, and I'd never heard of that before. And he's like, listen, man, this is what a lot of these guys do, and it works well. And I says, I've been doing it. And so I've done it a couple of times. And last year, I'm not sure if I did it or not. Last year, I didn't have very good success with much of what I did. But 2 years ago, I did that with pretty much everything I had left home from the pollination bees. And then this year, I did it with a lot of colonies, and had pretty good success. I had a few that didn't take, but most of them did. It was much better take this year than it was last year. And then, I've done 3 different types of splits this year. I've done the first splits I did were just basically Lynn helped me. My Hives for Heroes mentee helped me, and we went down. I had those queens coming from Hawaii, and I had to get it done. It was kind of cold and rainy and nasty back. I think it was in February. And but we just looked at the frames really good on both sides, tried to make sure we left the queen home where she was, and took like a nuke, like two or three frames of brood, a frame of food. I fed them, and then came by when the Hawaiian queens came in and introduced them the typical traditional method of introducing, and they did overall very well. And I mean, I've already made splits on most of those, and they're up in like four boxes now, so they're doing really, really well. And then of course I did the blind splits I talked about. I had to find a place for those cells. So some of them were typical splits, some of them were shake down below the excluder, and then towards the end of the day we just had to make splits to get a place for them. It was about to rain, and so Ray and I were doing that. We just kind of started going crazy doing those blind splits, and I dropped those 57 cells in, and they did well. And then the third kind of split I've done is where I just did these with the cells I introduced, and a lot of those were the Hawaiian queens. I'd added a second box on them, and I shook all the bees down below excluder, made sure the queen was below the excluder, for example. I came back, I pulled the split off, after the bees had a chance to work up into that top box, set it across the bee yard on a pallet. I came back and dropped the cells in. I think it was like later that afternoon when I did that, the cells that I grafted, and they've done, you'll see in the video, overall, they're just beautiful little queens, and they're doing really well. And so many ways to do it, and so many different names for so many different things. Some people prefer to move the queen away, like Brian is describing. I think that's important if you're trying to stop that swarming urge, and if you move the queen away in the same bee yard, a lot of the foragers are going to come back, but that queen's not going to skip a beat. She's going to continue to lay and build that colony up quickly, whereas the foragers may fly back and help strengthen the colony that's queenless if there's a cell, or if it's a walkaway situation or whatever, it's going to be strong with population. But my opinion is, and I might be wrong on this, but sometimes I like to leave the queen where she is and pull the queenless colony away, because I feel like in a couple things, maybe, and this might be totally off base, but for acceptance of a new cell or a new queen, especially if it's like a virgin queen, I feel like, or even a mated queen, I feel like if you have the young bees that are just emerging from that brood, they're left behind the nurse bees, my thoughts are they'll be more likely to accept that new queen or that cell or whatever is in there. I don't know if that's true or not. And also, if you leave the queen where you are and you're trying to make honey, she's got that population still, and they can just explode up into that new box. And so those are kind of a couple of concepts that I put into play. I've done a little bit of everything. Walkaway splits, I've had good success with queens emerging, getting mated, but the problem is that I've run into a little bit is those are emergency queens every time, the ones that don't have the queen in there, if you don't have a queen cell or swarm cells already. And so those emergency queens, they might be really good, but then again, if they may not be, if they're not fed well, if the eggs are the larvae is a little bit older, that's left behind, they may not get fed very well. And so, but when I do that, I may open it up and have 8 cells in there. I'll leave them all alone. If it's a true walkaway, they figure it out. Now, if it's a forced or a artificial swarm, like then I break them all down except for a couple of nice cells if there's already cells in there. But those are some principles that I apply when I do it. I think there's so many different ways to do it, and once again, we all do it our own way, and it's amazing that the bees can kind of figure it out, whatever we do.
Yeah, that's great. I think we'll circle back on splitting techniques and such. Every year we tend to talk about a lot of the same things throughout the season, and every year our experience and what we learned last year is new. So no matter how many years we keep doing this, there's always going to be a little bit new and different approach based on outcomes from the year prior. But I think the thing to consider with making splits is how you make your splits is largely based on your scale and your desired outcome. Yeah, the desired outcome could be to increase and make numbers. And if that's the case, you will scrounge through and you may pull every old queen and put her into a nuke box. And but sometimes your goal is to alleviate the potential swarm risks and productivity of older queens. You may choose to do something like split the boxes, add a queen cell, a ripe queen cell to each box, so you've got fresh queens throughout the entire operation. If you've got 3 hives, you can go through there, no problem. If you have 300 or 3,000, you're going to have to be extremely intentional with your time that you're putting into it, and then what you put into it, that's going to what you get out of it is largely based on what you put into it, and that those things matter. And as you operate in different scale with different goals, how you go about this is a lot different I've learned that as we've grown too. So we'll talk a lot more about that. I've got some really favorite ways that I like to make splits. We'll talk about those maybe in an upcoming bee chat. But I love talking about splits and making increase and taking resources where you can rub two nickels together and get a dime. I love those aspects inside of a bee yard. So that was good. Brian, you want to take some more of these starred questions?
Sure. Yeah. Here we go.
How much for 30 complete boxes ready to go on pallets without bees? Well, Spirit of Toad, shoot me a message or go to our website, get my number. Let's talk about that because we've got some different options in boxes. Of course, we have the roll will be the EnduraHive wax dip line, but within that line, we have some standard finger joint boxes. We have an upgrade, which is a Premier Pura box, dovetail joints, big beefy frame rest, big handholds. Then an upgrade from that, which is the Propolis edition of that. So you have a little higher Propolis envelope inside of the colony for that antiviral and antimicrobial component inside of the colony. And then when you say ready to go on pallets, we can build 4-way pallets and have those on there. We can also, if you just mean skid it up and ready to ship, we do that too. We can ship LTL. We can ship skids of products, no problem. So whatever you're looking for, whatever you need, whether it's tops, bottoms, 4-way pallets, boxes, frames, you name it, we can do it. And we're happy to put a price together for you. So go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com, click the About Us, and then get a hold of us and let's talk.
There we go.
The question is, who is that skid going to? And I think Jeremy Lindsay's, when is Brian expecting his shipment from you? Look at Brian. It depends how many queen cells Brian moves over and how many splits he makes, huh?
Right. That's it.
Bruce, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to put a shout out to you, Greg. Of course, these EnduraHive Propolis Hive boxes it's a fairly new product. However, very, very nice equipment. Very well. The thing about them that's interesting is, we dipped some boxes in wax. Boyd, man, myself, I've got some videos on how we did it. We were trying to figure it out, and we got it done. Those boxes are not showing any evidence of rot. It was a paraffin microcrystalline mix that he had ordered, and they're getting darker in color. But and some of them even they don't look great, but there's no rot at all in those, and we didn't know what we were doing. But when I've picked up your EnduraHive boxes, they don't really feel like they have wax on. They're not waxy feeling to the finger, to the touch really much. But that you can just tell it's a quality product, and the water pretty much beads up on them from what I understand, and they're just really very, very nice. And I haven't, I just put the hive in a colony into a double deep system with your EnduraHive, the Propolis, just recently, probably 3 weeks ago, and it's a hive I'm a little concerned about. Actually, I'm not. I think they were in the process of maybe they had a new queen. But I wanted to get it out there, put it in the bee yard about where I started my operation. It's within just a few feet of my first couple of hives I had. It may even be on one of those same spots. I thought that would be kind of cool, but it was the one that had the engraving from the conference and everything on it. But I just want to put a shout out. It is a very quality product. Obviously, we all know you can get boxes. You can do whatever the heck you want to do. But I believe these boxes will last because the ones that we did have been 3 or 4 years old and they have zero rot in them. And if your process is even better than the standard paraffin / microcrystalline mix, then I anticipate, you won't have to buy boxes. You won't have to replace many boxes at all. If you do, it's because they got smashed or something by a tree. Probably it's not going to be because they're rotting, from my understanding. We'll see, but I do believe that they are a quality product. And I'm not trying to, I've only got 3 or 4 of them. I got 4 of your boxes. I got 2 Propolis and I got of the EnduraHive. Maybe I have 3 or 4, and then I have a couple of mediums. So I don't have a whole bee yard full of them, but from what I've seen, I think they're very, very nice. And I've seen your bee yard, Greg, where you have quite a few of them out there, and the boxes look beautiful still. And I know you've had some of those out there for a couple of years or several years. And so, anyway, they're pretty. I know they're a little more pricey than your standard buy from Man Lake and put them together boxes, but if you pay, even if it's double, but they last you for 30 years, obviously it's worth the investment up front if you can afford to do that. So that's my
Yeah.
goal. My goal moving forward is, as I need to replace boxes, my goal at this point in time is to order from you. And when I have a need for the number that'll fit on a pallet or a skid, then that's my plan, is just to order a pallet from you and have I guess
Well,
you call it a
we look forward
skid.
to doing. Yeah, Bruce, we appreciate you the kind words there. Is the fact of the matter is boxes have been wax dipped for decades and decades and decades. There's nothing new about that. However, you can dip a box in anything that melts, and that will help to a certain extent. But what we have found is that paraffin microcrystalline blends, paraffin is a little more of an inexpensive filler, and it will seal a box off, but it also has a certain touch to it, has a certain penetration, and it's a completely different structure than microcrystalline. What we found is we were looking for a different outcome. We wanted to improve the overall feel of the box, the penetration of the box, and we wanted to do the best that we could to impregnate those boxes with the highest quality food grade wax. That's why we decided, yeah, there was already some blends out there of 50/50 paraffin and microcrystalline, and those will work. Gum rosin will work. Melted crayons would work. But we decided that we wanted to do the absolute best that we can. And so we actually blended and have put together our own proprietary blend of microcrystalline. There's no paraffin, it's microcrystalline blends to achieve a couple different things that we were looking for within those bee boxes. And so you'll notice you're not going to see extra or excess wax on the exteriors, dripping off the corners, stuck in the handholds. You're paying for a wax that is on that surface, and when that gets hot and goes through thermal expansion and capillary action, that will move, that will get displaced. What we want is the wax to be inside the cell structure and stay there. So that's why we do things a little bit differently. The temperatures, the times, the type of waxes that we use is a lot more difficult than a standard paraffin microcrystalline blend. However, there's a product out there for everybody. So no way are we saying if you use a paraffin microcrystalline that you have a junk box. We're not saying that. We're just saying that there are different tiers and qualities of products, and we chose to go all the way to the top and produce the best box with the best finish, but most importantly, the best protection for the long haul. So that's the EnduraHive wax dipped line of equipment. Tops, bottoms, boxes, anything you can imagine. That's what we do. That's what we stand for. And Bruce, we're looking forward to the day where we're going to ship you out a whole semi-load at some point. But in the meantime, enjoy the boxes that you have, and we're always looking for feedback. Always wanting to do better. We're a large family. We raise 7 kids on the farm. We're frugal. We have to be able to do something, invest in something, and get life out of it. When you factor in how much just a basic unassembled bee box is, you're going to be $14, $16 for the most part. By the time that you value your time at all and assemble that, even if you are able to go to Lowe's and get oops paint and paint that exterior once, and every 3 years paint it, that's a certain time. There's a certain amount of input. There's also a certain amount of waste that you're going to have there. With the wax dip, there's no paint, no rot, no hassle. It's one and done, inside and out. You're not going to be pulling boxes out to rework them because they're rotten or have corners falling out. But so, anyways,
Greg,
I'm excited.
Before we move on a little further, just one more question for you, and not involving your boxes, but just, and some people in here in the comments might want to chime in as well, who are familiar with wax dip boxes that have been done, as you said, over the years. What is the lifespan that you've seen from older wax dip boxes that you've seen? I know that you have dealt with people, maybe I think Chris Werner uses them possibly. How old are some of those boxes, some of these older beekeepers that have been doing it for years that you've seen, just the old way of doing it or their own way of doing it?
Right. Yeah. So using anything, I don't want to get in trouble by specifically quoting this beekeeper, but let's just say there was a time where anything that would melt would go into a 55-gallon drum, and that drum would get heated up and things would get dipped in there. What that does is that it extends the life of the wood by preventing moisture from staying inside and then feeding on organic matter and starting that fungal decomposition. Those boxes, you're talking about lasting 20 and 30 years. One other very large commercial beekeeper that we visited, John Knox Honey Farm, John showed us this wall of boxes next to one of the barns. And I said, man, those are good looking boxes. And he goes, yeah, we're getting ready to re-dip those. Dad dipped those 30 years ago. So,
Wow.
I mean, here's what I will say is we have not personally had the boxes in our operation in use for 30 years. I'm 42 years old. But what I will say is that if you are investing, whether you're a backyard beekeeper, a sideliner, or a commercial guy already knows this, if you are investing in something, it's hard to accept the buy once, cry once mentality. But once you get enough beekeeping years under your belt and you see that the boxes are falling apart and that you have bees in them and you have to replace those boxes just to house those bees, to pull those boxes out of use, to rework them, to scab them back together, you eventually will start putting a price point on your time and your input and your effort. And you have to say, is this the best use of my time? And for some folks, it might be. And for some folks, it's a lot of fun. And I'm not going to say that it's not. You know, I cut this finger off here building bee boxes. And we went to the effort of logging the trees, putting them on the sawmill, slapping together rabbit joints, putting the best coat of paint we could on. We were cash poor, time poor, and we were trying to throw anything together to get bees in it. If we had a cardboard box and we could put bees in it, we did at some point. I get it. We've been there. But what we also found is only 2-3 years later, after some of those instances, those boxes that we were in a hurry with, or they weren't fully protected, or they were too green, or there wasn't the things that we know now about, they're falling apart and they're getting put there. I've got a huge pile of equipment. And what's heartbreaking about it is we spent time as a family doing all those things. There's what's left of painted handprints and kids' names on these boxes, but the boxes won't hold bees anymore. They're falling apart. And that wasn't that long ago. That's for us. We can't, as a large family, growing a business, growing an apiary, we've got to invest in things where we're in it for the long haul. And the equipment doesn't need to be maintained every single year. So to answer your question, Bruce, it's fair to say a wax dipped box, when done correctly, is going to get decades of service without rotting, without fungal decomposition.
Awesome. And obviously, like you said, Greg, I think that it's really up to each person to decide on their own. You're not trying to say you have to use wax dip boxes, but right. I think some people, when they get started, it's maybe you're not able to, or you don't think you're able to afford it. Maybe you're not, but as you begin to kind of move forward in the process, you know, you'll begin to see the value of that. And I really like the wax dip boxes that we did a few years ago, even though some of them are turning really dark in color, but man, they're just just plugging along in them. I mean, they look really, I mean, they're not rotting, which is the biggest thing. I've got some that I painted, you know, either just before that or maybe even after, that are almost unusable now within, you know, 3 or 4 years. They're just rotting. And so I will say too I dipped a few of mine in copper naphthenate there, and then I've purchased quite a few from a guy that builds boxes for commercial guys, and they tipped them in copper and then painted them, and those last pretty well. But I don't think they'll last like the wax dip boxes will. I think they still will eventually break down. And some people get up in arms about the copper nap, but it's fine. They use it once the initial fumes gas off, which they are strong, then they're fine. I mean, it's not a big deal at all. But I just love the idea of the wax dipped. I think it's what I want to do moving forward in the future. Just kind of, I've got a lot of boxes that aren't dipped in anything, and as those begin to cycle out, I do intend on replacing them with it'll be several years long process, but as ultimately down the road, I'd like to have most, if not all, the wax dipped equipment.
The thing that I think a lot of folks don't consider, Bruce, is when you have a box that's painted on the outside, even if you are painting the exterior of that box religiously every single year, there is something that's occurring inside of that colony, of which you have raw organic
You're right.
material. You have wood fiber on the inside.
That's right.
When those bees respirate and create moisture, if you have a box that's just not quite square, if you have a lid that's leaking, you start getting penetrations of moisture. That's where you start to see those fronts start to kind of lean off the side, and you create your own bee entrances. It happens.
I've
And then
got
you'll
a lot
see
of
on
those.
the bottom of the box, the top of the box. It happens. I've seen it. You've seen it. We've all seen it. That situation doesn't occur with the wax dip box, because not only is the outside dipped, the inside is dipped. Everything about the box is dipped, and it's dipped after it's fastened. So even the penetrations of the fasteners are also dipped. Everything is sealed up nice. That's an important thing to kind of consider as you. What is this for me? Is it not? You can dip a box in anything. You can put a fifth. There you go.
There we go.
Classic corner rot that migrated. Yep.
Yeah, the one up there that underneath the top box, that's a rot situation. The one below, I think that box got damaged when it fell off of something. But anyway, the bees love the extra entrances, but they are not. That's 2 upper entrances there, Eric. But anyway, so I thought I've got a lot of boxes that look just like this, and the bees do fine, but
It's
I'd rather
classic.
have them sealed up better. So
Yeah, if you want to talk more about wax dip boxes, get with us. Like Bruce said, like we say, we are not absolutists. We are not saying if you don't buy our box, you have junk boxes. We're not saying that. Like with anything, if you want to invest in equipment, you want to last a long time, there's a certain way that you can go about doing it. Some folks find that they want to invest in their own wax dipping tank and their own wax. And one thing to consider is by the time that you go to the effort of doing that, and you're $5,000 or so into that investment, what's your payoff on that? By the time you have enough wax to fill even a small tank, you may be at $4,000 to $5,000 when you can go to somebody who is set up on a larger scale that can do custom dipping for you, for $5 a box. It's going to take you 1,000 boxes before you start to break even, but you don't really break even because that $5,000 investment on the tank and the wax, that's just to get enough wax in the tank to start dipping. And every box you dip takes away the wax, and it starts eating away. I'm not discouraging anybody from dipping on their own, but what I'm saying is if you're interested in preserving your equipment for the long haul, there are opportunities out there where if you want to get a skid of boxes, you might be shocked how affordable it actually is, all things considered. So I think wax dipping is an important thing. It also has a beautiful patina that Bruce mentioned. It darkens. It has its own root beer brown kind of a character. They look gorgeous and beautiful in a natural landscape and a bee art. They just fit. They just seem right. It's a beautiful thing. But let's not talk about wax dip boxes all night long. Let's move on and catch some more questions here. Bill Kurtz, Grumpy Bill's Bees, can you dip painted boxes that are still in good shape? Bill, you can, but here's the thing. You don't know what's inside of that box. Do you have any fungal spores, any kind of what is going on? Yes, the heat will kill a lot of those things in the dip tank. But what you will notice is if you do that, and it's an existing box, you will put an enormous crud film layer inside of that tank. From that, you will seal off the inside, but you're not going to penetrate you can't penetrate the wax to get to the cell structure where you have lignin and ray and thing on the end where the cell structure itself can pass the moisture through those drinking straws, as you would, that the capillary action is occurring where moisture is going in and out, where you're pushing the moisture out and sucking the wax in. You can't really do that if that's already encased in paint. So can you? Yes. Does it help? Is it better than not? Yeah. But if it's your own tank and you don't mind there being crud in there, or you're not doing it for anybody else, I think you could do it, but I'm not sure that might not be the best way to go about that. Brian, how about some other questions? There we go.
I like this one. This is the Greg show.
Brenda, what? No, I'm done talking for a little while. Brenda, what? Oh, at Greg. Brian, nobody wants to keep hearing me talk on. At Greg, do you find Caucasian line hives have lower mite counts than your other hives? I read online Caucasians have lower mite counts. Brenda, great question. I actually didn't know that for quite a long time. What we were noticing, however, is as we were kind of shifting over our genetic backbone toward New World Carney and Caucasian, what we were finding is lower mite counts. Our guest tonight, we were hoping to have Randy Oliver on, who's done an enormous amount of research on mite washes and mite counts, and the list goes on and on and on. And it was actually, I wanted to thank him personally. It was because of him bringing to the table the idea of using Dawn dish soap as an alternative to alcohol for a mite wash. It totally changed the game for us regarding mites. And what we were finding is that as we developed more Caucasian saturation within our stock, we were actually seeing lower and lower mite counts. So every single year, it seems as though we are constantly moving in a positive direction with lower mite counts. And for the most part, lower mite counts in general means lower viral loads. But I wanted to talk to Randy about that because I think there's a lot more going on than just that. I do think that you can have low mite populations and have high viral expression of viruses or viral strains that are possibly a little more dangerous or harmful to the bees than sometimes a large mite population with maybe weaker strains, weaker viral exposure. But that's a horse of a different color, and that's a conversation for a different day. Brian, the next question is for you.
Is it?
Brian, what is the best way to super when you don't have enough drawn comb? Under super, over super, or something else? Is all foundation okay? Brian, you take it first, and then Bruce, you follow up after.
Well, not all foundation is equal. I found that out. Just if you almost get what you pay for. I mean, if you want to go cheap with foundation, you're going to end up having to wax it, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to make sure you have enough wax, and you're going to have to spend all the time to wax all your foundation. So all of my foundation I get anymore it's all Premier. That's their heavy coated, and I'd never have a problem with it. So that addresses that there. Now, not saying that there's no other foundation out there that's like Premier. I only have experience with Premier. I bought some other from a local place. I don't know what type it is that they sell. They just, when you bought foundation, they had foundation. So I don't know what company it came from. I know it wasn't Premier because they still sell like a basic foundation and they sell Premier. But I used to get just the basic stuff that was cheaper, and I mean they would build all kind of funny designs on it. So you have to spend the extra time then. When I don't have drawn comb, I will add. So if I have a fully drawn out super, I'll put that on top of what I've just added just to pull them up. I've found that, and it varies. It varies on the flow and all that stuff, but I found that that'll just help to pull them up and get them used to that foundation. Now, we could run into a situation though where, Greg, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago maybe, when they were bypassing any foundation that was not drawn out, and they were just basically throwing it in anywhere because the flow was that heavy. So it just all depends on the environmental factors as well.
That's true.
Yeah, but I'll typically throw my super that's capped out or almost capped out above just to pull them up into it.
Bruce, you want to piggyback on that? What is the best way to super? The question is from Scott at Twin Creek Bees. What is the best way to super when you don't have enough drawn comb? Under super, over super, or something else? Is all foundation okay? Bruce, break that one apart.
Yeah, so there's so many ways to do this. Everybody has their own techniques, and it's when you don't have any drawn comb, it's a totally different ball game than if you've got drawn comb. I mean, what I've done for the years, and this is how I drew most of my foundation out into comb for my honey supers. There's two different things you want to draw out. You want to draw out brood comb, and you want to draw out, honey super comb if possible. So theoretically, you get your new nuke or your package, you let the bees fill up the bottom box till it's, well, they say 80% full of bees. Then you can slap another box of foundation on top of that if you want to go your double deep. And this is when you're a beginner, and they will eventually move up in there and draw that out, assuming the food is good, the flow is good, and your foundation is waxed properly. But honey supers is the same principle. That first year, you just got to put that box up there and let them draw it out. Once you start to establish that you have some drawn comb, there are many ways to do it, and I'm not saying any way is right or wrong. If I have just drawn comb I'm slapping up there, then I'll over super, under super, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But with foundation, what I've done a lot of this year already is I will under super the foundation. And I learned this from Tim Ives years ago. I'll put foundation above where I want my brood to be, and the bees will start drawing that out, and I'll put my comb above that, and they're trying to get up there to store that honey. And so they'll draw that comb out or that foundation out, in my experience, sometimes very quickly. Sometimes they're hesitant. Like Brian said, if there's a great big mad rush of honey, they'll pack it all in the drawn comb. They love drawn comb. Now, the queens love to lay in brand new, newly drawn out wax. And so if you don't have an excluder on there, then you may have a few eggs popping up in there. But at that point in time, you can move it up and put more foundation, or you can slap a queen excluder in there if she's working that area, and she'll go down. Now, I know there are different people that do it different ways. Gus Mitchell, for example, takes, if you're going to use it in a box, first of all, if you're using foundation as well in honey supers, you want to make sure you have 10 frames. Otherwise, the wonky comb will happen, whether it's wax foundation, plastic foundation, whatever it is. So you want to mash those, put those 10 frames together, or if it's an 8-frame box, 8 frames together as close as they will go. Once they've drawn it out, you can spread them out, and you can, not spread out 8 or 9 frames in your honey supers. But that's my preferred method. I know there are some people that have completely different opinions on that. And, but once you have that drawn out comb, man, it's just game on. They fill it up so fast. Comb is money, honestly, in the beekeeping world, and it's so valuable. As far as foundation goes, a large percentage of my operation, I have used Pureco, just straight up black plastic frames, triple wax Pureco over the years, and I've had tremendous success with that stuff. The bees love it. They do well on it. A lot of people say you can't use the plastic foundation. The bees don't like it, but they love it just fine. I've used the Premier. They do well with that. Though I think the wax is as important. The amount of wax, the coating, is as important or more important than the actual brand of this is my opinion, of foundation that you use. I know a lot of people love Acorn and various things, but my favorite, I bought a bunch of, back when it was still Premier foundation, the frames. I bought a whole pallet of basically 1,000 frames, wood frames, and 1,000 sheets of foundation. And I'm going to go put some together either tonight or tomorrow. I've still got some of that Jeff sent me back when they were having some issues providing, back in the early days when they were having some issues getting stuff put together. So he just sent me the stuff, and I'm putting it together myself. And I'm slapping it together now. It's still in the boxes, and the bees are just taking to it, and they're drawing it out. And so those are a few things to consider, but there's so many methods to use. I know I think Gary in here, he had a technique he told me about, and it looks like it works well. Yeah. Gary Stewart, it's a really good method as well. And so you just got to kind of figure out what works for you and then roll with it. But it is tough when you're a new beekeeper and you're just trying to get some comb. You're trying to get those bees to move up in there. Sometimes they're hesitant to go on that foundation and draw it out. But boy, once they do, it's game on. It's a lot of fun.
We could have a whole show on the art of wax. Not just the wax that's on the products, but I think that's why products like Premier stands out, is because of the quality. I know that's the reason why. It's the quality of the wax that is coating those plastic frames really makes a huge difference. And that's what we had seen in our trials when we were running several manufacturers. The bees were choosing to go to Premier first. They would draw everybody else's out, but they would go to Premier first. And we kept seeing it over and over and over again. So for us, That's why we decided to invest in Premier. The bees were drawing out first and foremost. There's got to be a reason, even though that we couldn't see it at the time. I didn't understand. I was still so stuck on small cell foundation, small cell wax foundation, that I didn't understand then that even the wax foundations isn't necessarily made with beeswax. I didn't realize that. How much paraffin and other more cost-effective or economy-grade waxes are in there was kind of surprising. But the quality of the wax makes all the difference. It would be a fun conversation to have somebody, maybe we could have somebody really smart, like, I don't know, Fred Dunn. Maybe we can get Fred Dunn on. Everybody go to Fred Dunn's channel, comment on his next video, and says, Greg at the StreamTeam requires your presence on a StreamTeam chat to talk about the art of wax. Specifically, it's actually really cool when you think about it. We're talking about, okay, if we don't have drawn foundation and we need the bees to draw it out so they can store a flow, there's something to be said about the health of the bees prior to there being enough of a flow for them to store, that I really do believe dictates how healthy they are and their wax glands on their ability to start creating and secreting wax on those young flows as they're building, so they can get that foundation drawn, so that when those really producing store away flows hit, there's actually something there for them to do it with. So anyways, go over to Fred Dunn's channel, comment on his next video, say Greg at the StreamTeam requires your presence on a StreamTeam episode where we can talk about the art of wax. I know he would do it.
I would almost say everybody just send him an email.
Oh gosh, so don't bombard him. Do it on his YouTube videos and comment there, because you know why? Because Fred, you guys are really great. I'm trying to do better with it. You guys are great. Fred is very excellent at engaging and interacting in the comment section on his YouTube videos. So hey, if you want a direct reply from Fred Dunn, don't burn up his email. Go right to a video and comment right there. He'll hit you back. But anyways, guys, we're almost at an hour and a half. But Bruce, what are you going to say? Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a comment in here that says no thanks. He's probably talking about, I would guess, maybe he's not, but talking about using plastic frames. I don't know. Maybe that's what he's talking about. I'm not sure. But I've had great success with them in the future. So the bees don't have an issue at all with them. And then Gary here makes a great point. He says 1-to-1 sugar syrup can be the key in drawing comb out, whether it's for brood or a super. That is true. And it's, if you want to draw out wax fast, especially if there's not a really nice flow going on, like for example, this year when I made those early splits, I fed them and they draw it out so fast with that thinner syrup. I mean, that's one way too to draw it out. If you got to make sure they have the stimulation to get those wax glands going to build that wax. You slap a box of foundation on a colony, and it's in a dearth, they won't touch it. I mean, they aren't concerned about that then, because they're just trying to, survive with what they have already. They don't want to expend the energy, or they don't have the ability to make that wax. Another quick little strategy, and this is something that I may do a video on it this weekend. I just was thinking about this today. When Joel was down here helping me, when we checked out those new queens from the cells, the grafts that I did, we added a second box on many of those, because even though the queens were mated then and they were beginning to lay, they were in small little patches where they had polished the cells, and the queens were just beginning to lay, but they were almost getting honey bound because there's such a flow going on right now. And so I'm like, man, we got to get some new frames on here. So we went to the barn when we added a bunch of honey boxes on many of the colonies, but on those colonies, I didn't have enough deep frames built. And so I ran out of deep frames. So I'm like, well, because we don't have enough deep boxes or deep frames for all the boxes I have, we can't put deeps on all of them. So I did it two different ways. Number one, I took a frame with a box with 10 frames in it, and we pulled a frame from the bottom box up into the new 10 frame box that we put on there. And we moved a frame of foundation down in the slot where that one was. And that way, that gets the bees up into that top box. And that gets them moving and going into that box and used to using it. And they will tend to, in my opinion, they'll tend to draw that second box out faster if you bring some bees and some brood up there for them to start working it. Plus, my hope is that they will start to draw that wax out, draw that foundation out, and then the queen will come up and start laying, and they'll just be able to clear out a space throughout that colony to put everything where they need it instead of getting honey bound in the bottom box. Secondly, when we ran out of those deep boxes, we put just medium supers. That's all I had. Medium supers of foundation on the other ones. I went by there, I think 2 or 3 days later, maybe it was 4 days, and the bees in the boxes that had the foundation that we had pulled up in the deeps, because the comb matched, they were already drawn. They were up there working. They were drawing that wax out just beautifully. And the ones where I just slapped the box of foundation on there, they were barely touching it. So I think it's important to get bees up there working. So the strategy I used to kind of help hopefully draw bees up there is I went and I took some frames from hives that were existing that had comb in them, where the bees hadn't maybe made up to those boxes yet, the mediums, and I kind of switched those out. And so hopefully that would draw some of those bees up to get them to start working it, because they're going to get plugged up if they don't start building that foundation out up there. So I think it's important, if you can, if the frames match up in size, to pull a frame from the bottom box and move it up. I guess you could do that with the honey supers as well to help draw those bees up and get them drawing wax out. Just a couple of ideas. We've got 182 people in here. It always seems like when we're starting to kind of want to wind it down, that's when we kind of peak out. We start getting more and more people on here.
It's one of those things it's hard for beekeepers to stop talking. I mean, we just love to talk. You get any of us, you get Bruce ramped up on honey production, and boy, he will go and go. You get me ramped up talking about queens or splits, we'll go and go. You get Brian ramped up on how he's going from 11 colonies to 60 this year. He just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. The fact of the matter is, there can be too much of a good thing, so we don't want to stay on too late tonight. Let's take this last question here from Kenneth Darden, and the question is, how would you requeen and split honey production hives after the honey flow? Bruce, I know your strategy in Alabama is going to be a little different than Ohio. You laugh because I know this can sometimes be a sensitive subject that can kind of cut into your Achilles heel a little bit. But Bruce, you specifically, how would you requeen and split honey production hives after the honey flow?
Well, Greg, last year I tried to do that. I completely broke down my Ozark bee yard late in the summer after the honey flow. I requeened. It was during a dearth, and I had a horrible experience with it. So I'm probably not the right guy to ask. Here in Alabama, when we pull the honey off, it's usually late June, early July, at least the way I do it, because our honey flows are basically over then. And we pull the honey, store the boxes, and then we got bees that are they're kind of ticked off. The people don't feel good. Bees don't feel good. It's just a miserable time. And so, but last year I had some queens available that I wanted to try out, and they weren't available because they were from up north until late summer. And so they were from, and so I tried to make splits in the late July, early August, and it kind of backfired on me just because the bees, it just wasn't a good time for me. So what I've decided to do in my operation is to try and do most of my splits in the springtime when everything is good, either right before the honey flow or during the honey flow, and then limit splitting or at, I'll fix some things maybe later in the year, but I don't plan to completely break down entire bee yards and do a lot of splits unless I get better at it, at least not in the near future. This year, when the honey boxes come off, I may fix some things with new queens or whatever, but I don't plan on making intentional splits and trying to make or introduce new queens much later in the year. I didn't have a good experience with it last year, but I know in other parts of the country, a lot of people love to do splits later in the year. So that, I think it's just maybe a geographical thing, or maybe it's just a beekeeper skill level thing. Cause I had a rough experience with it last year.
Well, the fall means something different, I think, to us all. It's the fall of the year, and we're in the autumn. But what flow is out there, what temperatures are out there, that can all be different. When Bruce, talks about spring, spring is a time where Bruce is supered up, and he's already ready to go. And it's when Ohioans think about spring, we're thinking about maple pollen and getting our hives from the winter position into a spring position, so they're already a month and a half ahead of us. So the same thing happens late in the year too. For us, what we say fall or late summer could be a little bit different, but requeening and splitting honey production hives after the honey flow up in Ohio is not a big deal, because it's actually a very handy way to do it, because you can capture the honey flow. You can then treat for mites, and if your choice treatment, depending on how bad your mites are, if you do smoke a queen, if you do cause any kind of brood damage, it's not a big deal, because you're already planning on requeening. You can split those mega colonies down, split them out, requeen them. Now they're cleaned up with mites. They build up to that size. They still have time to build up to the size that you need for our Ohio winters, and you can cruise and you can just keep doing that. So there's many different approaches, many different tools in the toolbox to do that. The main thing I think we all have to understand is that when we are saying fall or spring or summer or requeening or splitting, it's all going to be a little different based on where you are, where your neck of the woods is located in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what I know, Bruce, I know you know this, and Greg, you probably know this also. What manufacturer, frame-wise, is Simple Comb made for?
This is what you need to do. You need to reach out to Simple Comb and ask. They actually had sample frames at the Wisconsin Bee Conference we went to, and it's several different companies that it fits fine in. But I would definitely either look on their website or reach out to them. They have measurements that you need to.
Yeah.
So I think they may be designed for better bee, but you need to. I would just reach out to them, email them, talk to them. They actually sell kits where they sell the frames with Simple Comb, I believe. I got one of those kits, so it's going to fit. Last year, I ordered some from, it may have been Hilco, and the frames were too thick top to bottom, and I couldn't get it in there very well. I actually chiseled it out and got them to fit, and I didn't have we had a horrible flow last year, so I didn't have success, but I've got my setup out in the garage ready to go either tonight or tomorrow night. I'm going to put those together and try and get that on the colonies. When we pull honey next weekend, I'm going to slap that box of Simple Comb on one of my most productive colonies and just see what happens. I think it's going to be a real fun experiment for me, but I would definitely just reach out to the company and see, because I am not sure which it's 3 or 4 of the different companies or more that it works for, but you just need to make sure it's proper. It's right.
They don't fit Premier, because when I tried, they literally were sitting in there like this.
Yeah.
All bowed out. And so
if the top bar or the bottom bar is too thick top to bottom, it doesn't work. Now that's really good if you're using foundation, because it supports the foundation. But for the Simple Comb, you need to make sure, and they've got the measurements on the website exactly how tall by how wide it needs to be, the space. But the best thing to do is just reach out to them and ask them. They're more than willing to help you, and they'll make sure you have the right thing.
Since it's just us three, I'll go ahead and I'll say it. We haven't formally announced this yet, but we are indeed Ohio's dealer for Simple Comb, and we have Simple Comb cassettes at
Brian,
the shop.
Brian, can you do this? Whatever, your computer. What about how do you get it all the fancy stuff? There it is.
Yay. I'm away from my little soundboard, they're great folks there. Here's the thing. Not many folks understand that wax foundation is not created equally. There is huge variances in quality, construction, and price points. So it should be no surprise that frames are no different. What you will find is, and I'm trying to be careful how I say this, Brian's making special frames just for special things, like special hex colonies that have special things, because Brian, you know what? You're special.
I thought all frames were the same.
All frames are not created equal. You'll notice typically, and I'm going to be careful and choose my words here, but let's say the more economy-minded frames are typically thinner on the sides and also thinner on the tops. And what that does is gives you a little bit more interior room for certain things. The more expensive frames have more meat. There's a little bit more effort built into the dimensional stability of the frame, like Premier's frame. It's a big, husky, meaty frame. Because of that, there's more wood. So those cassettes, you're going to have a challenge getting the simple comb cassettes to fit in there. However, there are some things that we can do about that. If you want to talk about simple comb, you want to come see some of those at the shop. Stop by the shop, Nature's Image Farm, 1500 Flint Ridge Road, Hopewell, Ohio. Every Friday and Saturday, we're open 10 to 5. Let's talk about it. We'll show you, run you through there is not a product out there that is a silver bullet. Let's be real clear. There are pros and cons to every single product. The idea is we've got to figure out what meets your budget, what meets your goal, and what is going to produce the desired outcome that you have for you and your bees, and only you can determine that. And so that's why we come in. That's why I think shopping at somewhere like Nature's Image Farm, that's where I think it's helpful. You come visit us. We've got an experienced staff of beekeepers. We can talk about it. We can figure out what it is that you're looking for. And if we don't have it, guess what? We'll point you in the right direction. We want to see beekeepers do well. And that's why I think folks travel from all across the country to come visit our supply shop. We have the top of the line, the highest end products, but we want to see you do well. We can walk you through it. We can answer your questions, make sure that you have what you need to be successful, including talking about nuances with things like simple comb cassettes, a beautiful product, huge opportunities there, a lot more information on that coming soon. We also have a couple other really cool just released products, especially if you're queen breeders, that we've been in the works with for quite a long time. So it'd be interesting to roll those out too. So a lot of fun things happening at Nature's Image Farm. Not just our queen line and our nukes, but some of the equipment and supplies that we have available that you can't find anywhere else. It's primarily because the relationships that we have formed, the friends that we have in this industry, who they want to see folks do well, and that's the most important thing. When you come to the farm and you come to the supply shop, it's not the kind of shop where there are stuff laying around that we have just so we can make a buck. It's stuff that we can speak to, stuff that makes a difference in your beekeeping operation, but more importantly, the folks behind the products are operating with integrity and they want to see you do well. That's why we carry them in the shop. So,
and Greg has the best walls there is.
Brian, we also have one of the coolest products that were just recently released. You could say a blue ribbon product even, that we have a premium Hive kit single. And this rascal, to take a page out of Brian's book, is really dialed in. The Queen Right dial, man, we're so proud and excited to be the dealers in Ohio for Queen Right dial. Yeah. Super cool. Come see him at the farm, man. We've had Brian. Haven't had a chance to get with you and Jason on that, but the outpouring of support from not just beginning beekeepers but experienced beekeepers alike. It's a really cool tool that's making a big difference on how you can keep track of a colony, how you can stay dialed in to the condition of your colony. Super cool. Queen Right dial. Come check them out.
Yeah, good stuff.
Guys, what channel are we on next week? Bruce, all right. All right, Bruce, you have a whole week to put together the stellar Bruce's Bodacious Bees and Bee Chat Emporium R Us LLC Esquire. It's going to be awesome.
I will say that probably not this coming week, but 3 weeks from then we'll be having some. If everyone comes through, which I think they will, we're going to have some really nice prizes because I have a landmark that I'm about to hit. So, I want to make sure that we even if we hit it just before next week, we're right there, about 100 away or 95 away now from hitting the 25K mark. But I want to make sure we put together a really good show. And it's not going to be all prizes that night, but there's going to be some really nice, like literally probably thousands of dollars worth of stuff that we're going to give away that night. So, well, at least 1,000, maybe
folks,
2,000. There's going to be some really nice prizes. And I've got to get that all put together. So I want to make sure we're able to make it worth coming in, and we're going to talk bees. That's always the goal with the StreamTeam beekeeping chat, but we will have at least 3 to 4 really nice prizes and maybe a couple more mixed in there somewhere. So I'm just trying to make sure a lot of these people we talk about that we have, I think people that Greg and Brian and I believe in have already, some of them agreed to helping us out with that chat that night. So it's going to be fun. And but this next coming week, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I know we're going to be 2 days away from me pulling honey for the first time, so I'm a little bit anxious and I get nervous before that. There's a lot that's got to come together for us to do that. So I'm sure we'll have another great chat. I don't have any plans exactly for what we're going to do, but it's going to be good, and you'll see the thumbnail coming out before too long.
Bruce, for an anniversary kind of, or like a celebratory, that's the correct word, for a celebratory video, do you have a yard, like a specific yard that's a little bit more spicy than others?
Well, my Ozark yard is basically gone now, except for a few. But so yeah, I mean, I've got
from Bruce's yard. Look at that. Look at all those scars. That's all from Bruce's yard.
Whichever yard.
I would say that I have a spicy colony or 2 in each of my yards would be a good way to put it.
I want to see a celebratory video with you in shorts and just crack the lid, and you could throw, like, when you're pulling the lid up, you can have like some visual effects or something, like saying 25K as you're pulling up the video.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
CGI, everything like that, but you got to
Greg. See, Greg likes to get stung. That day I told him he better put his gloves on. He just didn't pay any attention to me. And so his hands, he had like 80 something stings in his hands. And then he said, finally, I'll put my gloves on. I'm like, man, they were hanging off his hands. I'm like, man,
the thing,
and it was in, to be fair, it was the end of July, which, like I said earlier, that is the absolute worst time. End of July, early August in Southeast Alabama is just an unhappy time for bees and beekeepers. So, and Greg came, down here used to his Appalachian, Caucasian mutts up there. They're just so nice and gentle, and they'll roll over and let you pet their belly. And I know Greg's seen mean bees before, but I don't guess he believed me. But he found out that those bees up there,
it's not uncommon for me to get stung 50 times a day, but I'm out doing knuckleheaded things with queenless starters, and it might be dark, or it might be a little bit of rain, or it's things that normal smart people aren't doing with their bees. And so when I go down to Bruce's, and at first, the thing about those bees, Bruce, is it wasn't that every single colony was spicy.
That's right.
We went through, gosh, 10 or 12 or maybe more, and it was fine. But then we hit that one on the end, and it smelled me coming. And as soon as I placed my hive tool, just touched the wood box, you could hear him just get set off. And I'm thinking, all right, well, we're going to still work through this, and crack the lid, and you get in there, and it was just, it was just.
They were hanging. They were hanging on your hands. They were hanging on your hands.
If I can, I'd like to be able to. I love taking like just cool, weird, goofy video of bee stuff. What would be really cool is a nice close-up macro video of a bee kite where she's coming off and she's stuck on your hand and she's just flying and she's flying. It's this big long string. Not that it's cool that she's dying or that she's completely disemboweled. But it is extremely interesting to see a disemboweled bee who is hanging from her guts, and she's trying to fly off and get away. It's a bee kite. It is just, you look at it, you're thinking, what in the world's going on there? Anyways, Bruce's were like that, and it was just in that one colony, 88, 89, whatever, however many stings that you could actually count. Hey, anyways, it's one of those things. Look, I'm not the guys. I know it's just us three. I'm not the guy to tell anybody what to do. I'm not the kind of guy to tell anybody how to do it without or unless they solicit or they ask. I would highly encourage folks. Actually, I would almost recommend that folks stay tuned to the StreamTeam trio. Keep an eye out on the Castle Hives YouTube channel, the Bruce's Bees YouTube channel, and the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. Bruce is getting ready to hit, what is it, 25K, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our
That's
channel is growing. We're getting ready to hit 10K. Brian's at the footsteps of getting doing the same thing. It's a little bit of a secret. I'll let the cat out of the bag because you guys are awesome. There is going to be some seriously awesome giveaways on Bruce's channel, on our channel, I'm sure on Brian's channel. This is not a bribe. This is not saying only come to the bee chats for free stuff, but I'm saying if you come to the bee chats, there'll be some free stuff. If you're interested in one of the coolest freebies, go check back on a video that I did 2 videos ago where we are shipping off an entire skid of Endura Hive wax dipped boxes. They're the premier Pura Hive box, dovetail joints, huge handholds, beefy frame rest, loaded with the Puracell double wax foundation. A whole entire skid of that got shipped off to one of our favorite beekeeping friends in the country. We left a little hint. If you can guess who it is, leave a comment in that video. With Brian's help, we'll put a Wheel of Fortune up. We'll spin the names, and Brian, there's a bunch. And the winner will ship you your very own Endura Hive wax dip box, loaded full of frames. It's going to be awesome.
Nice.
It's going to be fun to keep doing things like this, to keep paying things forward to folks. There's been so many great folks who've had super chats, folks that invest in channel memberships on all of our channels, folks that will go to Bruce's website at brucesbees.com. They go to naturesimagefarm.com or castlehives.com, and they look and peruse those products, and they buy and they support. We want you guys all to know that we appreciate when you vote with your wallet and you support us. We want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for joining us on these chats, for leaving comments on the videos, and for engaging and helping make this community truly special. Brian, any final thoughts?
I have a question here. When I get that skid, when that shipment gets dropped in the drive, did you put a list of all the names with the entries?
Right, I did.
Okay.
Brian, you're not supposed to tell everybody that we just shipped you a semi-load. I mean, that was supposed to be our little secret.
Right. Well, I figure with 15 colonies, what I wanted to do is be able to stack them like 15 or 20 boxes high.
Right.
So,
I mean, you can still have 11 colonies. They can just have 12 boxes on them each, right? I mean, it's
exactly.
Tara will never know. She'll never know. She'll never know.
Yeah. Well,
guys, any final thoughts before we cut loose for the night?
No, I just want to say I got a couple. I mean, everybody knows it's a really busy time of year for beekeeping. There's a very cool product that I'm gonna play around with, and probably have a video on it in. It's probably going to be a week or two because I want to make sure that I test, and I'm going to test it side by side, and see the results and things like that. But it's pretty darn cool. So, yeah. But keep an eye also because you'll find out if I've turned my colonies into swarm factories or if I'm going to produce honey. So,
I think you're turning your boxes into Bruce. What was that fellow's name that you had on a chat? Oh gosh, it's been a couple years ago. It was just Towers of Supers.
We talked about him. We did. He hasn't, but it's Tim Ives is who you're talking. Or Randall Carter. Randall Carter.
Yeah, Randall Carter.
Yeah, the honey stacking thing. Yeah, that's what Brian turned into.
Yeah.
Bruce, what's up with you this next week?
Just gonna be getting ready for this honey harvest coming up. Just kind of, I'm gonna go out this weekend and check on those bees, make sure they got plenty of space. The new splits that I made with the new grafts in them, make sure they're still doing well. May actually add. I found some more deep frames, so I may kind of try to stack a few more of those on if they're not going up into those medium boxes I put on that we talked about earlier. If you're trying to get some frames stapled together, I've got them down in the garage or down in my truck and put them in the garage. Also going to try and get my simple comb ready to go, and just get prepared for the the first honey harvest we're going to do. If everything works out, May 10th and 11th. And I just rock and roll, keep rocking along. Honey is our focus now. I'm trying a few things with queens, a few things with just some beekeeping stuff. I'm working with some different people on some things, but as far as the main emphasis and the main focus right now, it's honey production for me. And so it's been a fun year so far. I would like to just quickly give a quick shout out to a couple folks I met out in Utah with channels. I think it'd be neat if you could go check out their channels. We got Barker's Bees and Honey. That's Bracken Barker. He's a young guy we talked about earlier in the chat that has used bees to overcome some real problems and issues in his life. He talks about it. There's a video where he tells his story from a few months back, a couple months ago. I would go back first and watch that video to find out who he is, and then you'll see he's a pretty darn good beekeeper as well. He's just a neat story. And then Utah Bee Man Glade Sessions also. He actually ate lunch with us that day. And he's got a really good channel too. He's a solid beekeeper up there and kind of out there east of Salt Lake, out there kind of way out in the mountains, a place called Roosevelt, Utah. And then we just had a great time out there in Utah, and I appreciate everyone who was able to meet me or reach out to me when we were in Utah. But that's the plan for the next upcoming few weeks. It's just both guns ablaze. It's a lot of fun. This is what we do beekeeping for, is this time of the year. And it's just so much fun right now. And I hope that we have a good honey crop, and I hope I manage them properly so that moving into summer and into next year, we can keep some bees alive this year and not, have an entire bee yard that I just totally screw up due to beekeeper error. Fortunately, I didn't do that to all my bees last year. I just did it to one spot, and so I still had quite a few bees coming out of winter that I was able to fall back on, and I've got my numbers back up where I kind of wanted them, but I really it was beekeeper error. My strategy was not good, and I learned a lot of lessons last year. I put a lot of work in for quite a bit of failure, and this year I'm just trying to go back to basic beekeeping principles that have worked for me all these years in the past, and just trying to kind of get move, I guess, onward and upward, as they say, and try and get better and more efficient with what I'm doing. Yeah, Jason's in here. Jason Egan, he actually is one of the guys that him and his wife met us for lunch that day, as well as Ian from down there in the Provo area. And so we had Jonathan from down in Goshen, Utah, and then Glade was there. Oh, am I forgetting anybody? I don't want to forget anybody. I think that's
John was there, wasn't he?
Like a good time.
John was there too. Yeah, we had. I think that's everybody. Ian, John, Glade, Jason, and his wife. I think that was it. So yeah, and then we had several people that kind of reached out to me, couldn't make it because it was on a Friday at lunch, and a lot of people work. But we did have. I'll tell you, like we said earlier, beekeepers can talk. Overall, John was there, I think, an hour and a half or so. He had to get back to work, but the rest of us sat there for over 3 hours. And finally, Jason's wife said, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go. So, anyway, yeah. But yeah, it was fun. But no, that's it. That's what's going on at Bruce's Bees, and it's just so much fun right now. It's just unbelievable.
This is go time. This is the time where you can nearly do no wrong in the bee yard. If you do, you can correct so quick, but it's such a fun time. It's that when spring opens up and there's the blooms and you're seeing the potential for fruit, when you're seeing the bloom and fruit in your own life, when you're seeing it with the bees themselves, it's just a beautiful time to be alive. It's a beautiful time to be a beekeeper. There's so many things to be grateful for, and we just want to let everybody know that we're grateful for you spending time here with the StreamTeam Beekeeping Chat. You guys are awesome. Next, Bee Chat, the StreamTeam Beekeeping Chat on the Bruce's Bees YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Eastern. Bruce's Bodacious Bees Emporium LLC, ours, us, Esquire. I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about, but I guarantee you we're going to be talking a lot. That's what we do.
About bees. We'll be talking about bees.
About bees, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
and get ready for the stream. I guess 3 weeks from this, or 4 weeks from now, probably. There's gonna be some stuff happening that night for sure.
Some giveaways. It's gonna be awesome. Yep.
Just get ready for a good time the next few weeks. It's a fun time to be a beekeeper.
Autographed Bruce's bodacious body bars.
Wow, that almost needs to be like a poster. I mean, I can just see, Bruce with just ripped in the body bars and just clink clink. I mean, someone ought to do that. Where's Brian Lee? I think we need some shirts. Bruce is like the circus weightlifter guy. Bruce.
What's that Duluth?
Handlebar mustache and the.
What's it called? The Duluth trading commercials.
That's it. It'll be
just
Bruce
about with my. Yeah, we'll do something like that.
Yep.
Well, that can be the logo for my body bar or something like that.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week. If you need one box or one semi-load, naturesimagefarm.com. Check out the EnduraHive wax tip line of equipment. We appreciate you guys. We thank you for spending time with us. As always, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.